Okay, so leaving off from yesterday, um, I basically added the test last night for all the other things that we mentioned. So from that job generator, I made an event generator, a mail generator, and started a view generator as well. And this is mostly passing. There's just a couple small things to do here. So we'll kind of jump right back in to everything by kind of finishing out this view, and then I'd like to move on to the form request generator. And I think that'll be enough for today. So let's get in and check that out. All right, so let's go to this view generator test, and we have the view generator. Bring these up side by side. Okay, so the view generator is going to be really, really basic, actually. I'm not going to get into the habit of making views, definitely not for this first version, and honestly, probably not for future versions either. I think there's plenty of generators out there for views, and I also think now with the new separated Laravel UI presets package, I think there's some opportunity to work there. So again, you might be using Tailwind, Bootstrap, something completely different, Foundation, whatever the new ones are these days. So because of that, it's probably just not an area Blueprint's going to get into. But at the least, what I want to do is at least generate the blade template. So that's what this generator is going to do. So basically, if you have like render post.index like we've been seeing, so if we go to the README example, we have this render post index. I'd like to have that at least see if this blade template exists, and if it doesn't, go ahead and make that. So let's do that. Let's finish this up. So we have this set up, and we have outputs nothing for an MP3. It outputs nothing without, let's call this render statements. So this will be a render statements. All right. And then it writes views for render statements. There we go. And it outputs new views, or it only outputs new views. Okay, great. Okay, so what we can do is what I've been doing on all these. We're just going to get that view stub. We're going to get, we don't need to get anything else other than just the view stub, so we can clean this up a little bit. And basically we'll say something like if resources, let's change this actually, just universally, because it's gonna be annoying otherwise. So we'll say resources user dot index dot blade dot php. Cool. And then for this one, we'll call this resources post slash index dot blade dot php. Okay, cool. So it's going to ask if those exist. Initially, we're going to say no in this first test, so it should end up generating a resources user index blade dot php. And we'll want this to be the user dot index dot blade dot php, and we'll make this one post. Whoops. Post dot index dot blade dot php. Let's try that. And you know what? Let's actually change this real quick. Let's just call this show, and I will change this to show just to get a little variance. Sometimes it's good to not have the exact same thing. It just makes it that much harder to like stumble upon an implementation. Okay, I think this should be good. We just need to go make these these templates now, these fixtures, and let's also make a render statements.bp. So let's go make these fixtures. And I think we should be in a place where this test will be failing for all of the right reasons. So we have this fire bit here. I think I have a mail 1, 2 send statements. Yeah, there we go. Let's take this one because I modeled this off of the mail stuff. So let's call this render statements. Render statements already exist. Interesting. I must have built that last night. Great, cool. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do controllers. So it looks like we actually have a few here. Looks like we have this role and not posts. So let's live with this. I don't want to change it just in case I'm using in my other tests. So let's go ahead and clean this up. Let's do, instead of post show, let's bring that back up actually. Render statements. We got to create, and let's call this show. I know I'm not using this anywhere, so it's okay. And let's call this show, and we'll send it in with, what is it, post. And we'll send this in with something else here, like categories. I just want some variance, again, in this with statement, one without, and then one with kind of just one. So this is one with a couple. So I think that gives us enough. So let's make another one of these. We'll return true here. This shouldn't be that big of a deal. We'll call that create. So that should be our only. And then down here, we'll need to make a few versions of these. So we should be able to say something like show and I really don't want to make, like, there's nothing special about the output of these. So let's actually clean this up a little bit. All right, so first of all, if it asks that it exists, we want to say false. So that'll be create, and we should put that out as create, and then we have show and show for post. Okay, this is good. This is the part that I want to change. I want to take this and var it off. Whoops. And call this template. And that's good enough. And then instead of expecting the fixtures, I don't need to make fixtures for these. They're super, super simple. I'm just going to string replace the dummy view with whatever it's called. So in this case, it should be called user.index.blade.php. So basically just like the path. So we will do that. And then same thing down here. Oh, we need template, of course. So just setting all these up. This is kind of tedious, but it's good. It gives us all the things we need to make sure that this is good to release to the wild. So this will be post, show, and this will be user, create. Okay, let's see where we are. And let's take just this view generator test. So it doesn't generate anything, and it looks like we just have something a little bit off on that, so that's no big deal. So let's run this again and just limit it to just this file. Okay, so first things first, it's definitely not doing this show blade correctly. So I'm actually going to start in reverse order and work on the only new views because that's going to drive out this view generator path. So let's check out get path, and it definitely shouldn't be going here anymore. It should be going to resources, and then name. Name's actually a little bit interesting, and we want its extension to be .blade.php. So name is the template name, but we actually have to like turn it into a path a little bit, if you will. So let's set this up by saying we can do string replace basically any dots with the directory separator in name. Let's see how far that gets us. If we're lucky, it's going to pass. And it doesn't. Okay. Model exists. Resource user index blade.php should be called, but it was not. Resources. So it actually parsed that name out right. That looks pretty good. Maybe our test is just not set up correctly. So get the stub, that's fine. Call exists on resources user index blade. Let's check our render statement. User index, user create, oops, that should be post show, so that's part of it. And we're still failing. Method exists from mockery should be called 1 times, but called 0 times. All right, why aren't you called? Oh, I think I know what's wrong. Did I not set this up right? Controller lexer, view generator. We make a new view generator. Yeah? That should be pretty good. Let's just make sure we're getting in the right spot. How about that? Let's just do an old var dump here. All right, we're definitely getting there. 3 times, 4 times, so we're definitely getting to the right class. So just worried some of the copy paste was a little bit off, but it seems okay. Oh, here we go. Needs to be a render statement. And let's import that. There we go. And we don't need that anymore. Again, good old copy paste bugs. Okay. Mockery exists does not exist on this mock object. Output writes nothing tree without render statements. It's kind of a weird name. Let's check this out. Output writes nothing. Output writes nothing without render statements. That should be correct. Should not have received put. Oh, we can't use the render statements for. I was using the render statements BP definition for other files, but now I need something that doesn't have any render statements. So let's go take a look. Dispatch. Part of me wants like a controller's statement that doesn't have anything. I could probably just use this controllers only. Let's just try that for now. Controllers only. Let's see if this explodes. There we go, that's a little better. Okay, output writes views for render statements. Populate stub must be an instance of fire statement. Good, okay. We're back to the old copy-paste bugs here. So let's go find everywhere I do this fire statement, because that's just flat out wrong. Cool, let's call this a render statement. Let's escape that and clean up the duplication. And then it looked like there was one more, this fire statement. Let's clean all these up too. This should be called, not that, render statement. All right, cool. Now let's slow down and take a look at what's going on here. Okay, so when we populate the stub, we really don't have that many things to do here. Part of me thinks we don't even need to call like this populate stub crap. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just get rid of this. Or well, I don't know, then it's not symmetrical with everything else. Decisions. All right, let's return the stub directly. We don't need any of these other methods for sure, so we can clean those out. And then we're going to change dummy view to be basically the path. So we could say something like this, get path, render statement, name. Let's just see what this looks like. Or wait, is that called template? What is that called? View. There it is. Get path. Let's say view. There we go. All right. No matching handler resources user index extends layout resources user index blade.php. All right, cool. So the question now is, what do we want for this blade bit? I'm starting to feel like it makes sense just to use the view name directly and not necessarily the path. So whatever view name they said, like obviously they're gonna, like a developer would recognize that. So let's just use it directly, and we'll go back and update our tests. So this should be user index, user create. So wherever we were replacing all those, I bumped my resolution down for like these live streams, and it's it causes a lot of scrolling. Okay, so this should just be user.index. And this should be something like create, what is this? User.create, and then post.show. So yeah, let's not do all that craziness. There we go, getting a little closer. Now what's wrong? Oh, I'm out of order here. So I actually made 3 of these things. So let's copy, paste that, and change this to create, and we should be green. Yes, we are, good. Okay, last thing I want to do is I actually want to update that stub. Let's just call this dummy view template and see if everything still works, and it does because we're using string replacement. So this would output something like user.index template. Do we like template or not? Got a few people out there. Let's vote if you're listening. You want to see template in there, or you just want to see the simple user.index? Can't decide. So like if you didn't put anything and all this code, like ideally it's working code. So you would go, you would hit this page, all these views would be here, the controller would be here, it would render it, all that kind of stuff. And you would just see on the page user.index or user.index template. What do we think? Did we get any votes? No votes yet. Fine then. Dummy view. Well, it's a super simple change. So I'm going to move on without the template word. If somebody disagrees, feel free to chime in. +1 for template. All right, cool. We got a vote, so you win. So let's go back to this template. Cool. All right, cool. All right, moving on. That is the view bit. We are all passing. So let's pop that off. Good. None of my changing of view names or templates messed anything up. So we should be good here. I'm going to do a git add -p. So we just changed this to post to add some additional stuff. This should all be good. And then git add dot. All right, so git commit -m tdd view. Let's just call it view generator. Cool. Git push origin head. We are there. All right, cool. Let's move on. Let's move on to the what's our other generator? The validator generator. It's got a nice rhyme to it. So this would be a form request generator. It's gonna be very much like it's probably going to be mostly like the mail generator. Let's copy that. The mail generator has a couple things where it builds up assignment statements and whatnot. So I think this is probably enough to get going. So let's take this guy, and I'm going to call this form request generator. And everywhere in here, I'm going to change mail to be a form request. Replace all that. Cool. And then anywhere I've got a send statement probably needs to be a validate statement. So let's just go ahead and get this copy pasta correct. And anywhere where it says send statement should be validate statement without the line break. Cool. Okay, there's our form request generator. Just kind of give us a little boost here. And let's take this mail generator test, since that's what we copied. And we'll do a form request generator test. And we'll do the same thing here. Awesome. And everywhere we're using the whatever statement. So let's just kind of take a look at this. So form request stub is probably not what I want to call it. Let's call this a form dash request dot stub. So let's change that everywhere. And we'll go make one of those here in a second, but let's just kind of scroll through this a little bit more. So we probably want like validate statements here. And I don't know if we're going to need that constructor, but we'll leave that alone for now. Form requestables. That's fine. Form request. Here we go. Validate statement. Awesome. Okay, let's see how much this explodes. So the only tests that are failing are our form request tests. Good. Okay, this gives us a little jump start. Let's narrow things down to this, and let's start getting these going. So we have this form request stub. So what I'm going to do actually real quick is I'm going to go out to my base code field guide project, because I know this is running Laravel 7, and I'm going to do PHP artisan make request, and we'll just call this a form, or I'll call this dummy request. And if I do a GST, we'll get actually a mock, or a stub of this here that's been generated, and we can kind of easily use that as a template. So let me move this to blueprint stubs, form request dot stub. Cool. Whoops, dot. There we go. So that did not do what I wanted it to do. Oh, I'm doing that wrong. This is app HTTP request, dummy request. Should go there. There we go. Now this should be clean. I should be able to go back, and I should see the form request stub. So let's go take a look at that. There it is. Okay, so this is going to need to be dummy namespace, and this should be dummy class, is what we've been calling that all along. We can leave this in here. Again, it's all auto-generated. The rules are going to be what needs to be kind of cleaned up. So let's do rules here and dot, dot, dot. Awesome. Okay, so that's what we're going to want to fix. So now we should be getting new errors. Oh, shit. Where's our little... So far back. There we go. Okay, good. So we got one passing now when we skip. So output writes nothing tree. All right, let's clean up that name. Outputs writes nothing without validate statements. Cool. So the issue now is we don't have this validate statements blueprint file. So let's continue down the path of making our new fixers. So I'm going to borrow this README example and turn it into the validate statements. And let's call this validate. And we're going to want to validate title and content. And we're kind of doing the same thing with store already. So I wouldn't want to validate anything here in this. And let's just slow that down a bit. And let's do the same thing for like an update method. So this is where it's going to get a little bit interesting. What I want to do here is do like sample or other. Let's see here. Okay, what I'm trying to think of here is this is smart enough. I want Blueprint to be smart enough that when you're within the context of a previously generated model, it knows to use these fields against this, okay? And then I also want the scenario where it's going to be smart enough to also kind of reference those as well. So I can say something like validate post.title, for example, even though this is a little bit silly, like you would never really do that. Let's just use it for now. And then what I want also to do is something like other here, where I basically say the same thing, but there's not a reference. Like I don't know what this is. So this is like, you know, other.title and other.content. And what I would want this to do at a minimum is if I don't know what the model is, even if you've attempted to kind of qualify it here. And again, this will get improved probably after version 1 to kind of go and try to find this model. But initially, if it's not in the blueprint statement or definition, I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to like make a very generic like required, like it's required. Like you got to fill in the rest, but at least it gives you something. Okay, so with that said, let's generate this. So we should have this validate statements. So now output writes nothing without validate statements. And now the issue is validate statement does not have a form request. Makes total sense. Cool. Okay, this generator is actually going to be pretty interesting. So let's get started here. And let's kind of talk through some of it first. Okay, the reason it's interesting is this is going to be one of the first things that we're generating, that the statement has to have a little bit of context. It has to know its context, like what method of what controller is this validate statement inside of. And so we've never really been using these before. We've just been kind of for each over these. But now we're actually going to have to take that controller name and that method name and be able to generate something to create that form request. So for example, if I'm within, let's bring up this validate statements again. So if I'm within the post controller index, this should be like post index, request. And this should be like post store request. And this would be like other store request. So I'm going to need to generate that name. So let's update the test to be a little smarter about what it should be finding. So it writes nothing. That should actually work. We don't want to do, when we have empty, that should work. And then without validate statements, so this should not be validate statement. This should just be controller only, or controllers only. I think we were using that last time. Cool. Okay, so now we're getting down to the meat. So we have get. I don't need this constructor, I don't believe, so let's drop that out. And what we should be getting here are a couple different form requests. So let's bring this back up. So the validate statements should generate 3 again. So first it's going to say app HTTP, or let's get this correct across the board here. So let's change this everywhere. This one is going to be app HTTP form, or no, requests is what it's under. And then this first one is what? The index or post index request. That's what it should make. Cool. Next is this one. And this will be our app HTTP requests. This will be other store request. cool. And then we want to inject a new one since we added 3 to get all the different variances. And what we're going to want to do here is say post store request. And we're going to fix that here in just a sec. But we'll get one more creation out of this. And this will be post store request. So generating a couple extra ones here, but I think it gives me like a good example, or each one of kind of the different variances. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday, but like, you know, you probably don't need to like go through all of these different cases, but like this is where I'm getting a bulk of my testing are from these generator tests, because they test not only the fixture, kind of like the syntax, but also kind of how the model gets stored. Model meaning like the data object that we're using, in this case the validate statement object, and then also what actually gets output. So this is actually a really, really robust test, because it touches pretty much every layer of the life cycle for one of these validate statements. Okay, cool. So what I was trying to do was get this last store here. That's what I wanted. Because ideally this test would just be passing. And we'll get it down like we did a minute ago, where we're just don't have that other one. Okay, so it only outputs new form requests, should definitely be passing. So let's mess with this real quick. Let's change this. It writes form requests. Why didn't it pick that up? Oh, there we go. All right, cool. And now the issue here is probably get path. This needs to be app HTTP requests, and then here's the rub. What's the name of this thing? So it'd be nice to send a name as something else. So let's do this. Let's do a name is equal to it's going to be equal to the controller, and there's no such thing in the validate statement as a name. It just has data. That's all it knows. I'm wondering if I should store this on the validate statement when it gets parsed. I think for now I'm gonna live with it here, but I kind of don't like it. So the name here is going to be assumed. Yeah, see, this gets weird because like, what if someone writes controller? Like, I don't want this to be called post controller index request. I mean, it's super explicit, but I kind of don't want that. So it'd be kind of cool if I had something like controller context, and it's smart enough to know, like, okay, look, if I have a name and it has controller as a suffix, like chop it off and give me whatever the base is. But whatever. Okay, let's just stick with name for now. We're gonna assume that it's the model, and we're gonna assume that it's Studley, and we're gonna then assume that the method that we want to use, so this is gonna be str Studley, and this will be method, and then we're gonna dot basically request on the end of that. So let's see where this gets us. And we'll send name into here. Let's see where this gets us. Okay, it only outputs, okay, validate statement form request. So still got a problem here on line 63. What's wrong with you? Line 63, this is going to get replaced by name. and we don't have the name. So let's, again, pass in a string of name here. Let's clean this up. So we'll pass in this stub with a name and a statement. Still failing. It only outputs new form requests. Stub's partial okay, we don't need that constructor anymore, so let's get rid of that. I do want to change rules out, and let's do a build rules. Build rules. Cool. And we're going to pass in the validate statement. We shouldn't need name or anything anymore. And I don't need this constructor bit. And data should never be empty. Should. Okay, cool. And then now I'm just going to want to return a bunch of this stuff. So there's really no like template to mess with. Yeah. It's kind of just like, honestly, it's kind of just like this build assignments. Let's do that. Let's get build assignments. This is not exactly what I want, but I'm going to return this for now. And let's get rid of the rest of these. And this needs to be validate statement data. All right, cool. Still not working. Mockery put does not exist. Line 45. What is it trying to put? Okay, it actually tried to write something. Let's var dump. Var dip. Let's var dump path and see if this is what we expect. App HTTP request post store request.php. That's pretty solid. App. Okay, so it's not getting. It's calling it post. Did I have my validate statements wrong? That is post. Maybe I just have my test wrong. Post index request, post index other store requests. So these should all return. Whoops. That should be true. Maybe that's part of the issue. There we go. That's what we want. Okay, so now we're down to just outputting the form request. And this is where we're going to need some fixtures. So what I'm going to do is build some new files in here under form requests and make a, what is this, post index.php. That should be enough. And what we should get here is pretty much this form request stub. These are actually going to match, which is kind of nice. Let's build one of these out, and then we'll see how far we get. So let's dump this out. And the rules here should basically be title, should be required, and a string, and like maybe even something like max length 400. What is that in Laravel? Laravel validation rules. Excuse me. Where are you? Is there like a max length, or is it just size? Max. The max value at my use strings numeric arrays are evaluated the same fashion as the size rule. I wonder what's more common. For string data, value corresponds to the number of characters. For numeric data, for an array, I don't know if what communicates better, like max? Yeah, see, they use max 255, so let's do the same thing. So it's not max length, it's just max. And then string, I think, is a real one, right? Yeah, string. The field on validation must be a string if you would like to allow the field to also be null. Okay, so it's nullable, great. Okay, so string's a little bit silly, but it should basically be that, and then we should also get content as a required string with no max. So basically that's the way post index and post store should look, right? Or well, wait, post index should only be the title. So let's get rid of that. And this should say post index request, and this should be app HTTP requests. All right, so let's finish that post store. Same namespace, post store request. I'm also going to want to default authorize this to true. I just want it, again, I want it working out of the box. In fact, this really shouldn't even be in here because it defaults to true. But I also want to kind of balance being in line with what Artisan generates, so that way it's not too different. Obviously, we're filling in more details, but again, so I want to balance it working, but also being like what you would expect if you generated this yourself. So let's fix that there and fix it here too. True. Okay, cool. So this is the ideal goal of what we would generate, and then we're also going to generate other store. And this should be other store. And since we don't know these rules, we should just get a plain old required here. We don't know anything else about these, right? Even though they're the same information, you know, it's just not sure what we know. And I guess to that point, let's also get some variants here. So other field and text or something. I have no idea. So let's say field and text. Cool. All right, let's get back to where we're going here. So now we have some form requests to compare these against. So we should be able to get post index, and this should come not from there. This should come from form requests, and this should be post store, and this should be other store, right? I think that's what we called all these. Other store, post store, underneath form dash requests. Form dash requests. Okay, so we shouldn't be getting any more failed to open streams. We should get straight things not matching anymore. Good. Okay, so we aren't getting the appropriate created array, so we could probably fix that real quick. So path is actually good. So is something wrong with our path? App HTTP request, post index request, post store request, and then other store request. That should be good. What's wrong? We expected that, but we got nothing back? Is that what it's suggesting? That's strange. Let's say app HTTP requests. It's interesting that that's failing. Line 95. Assert equals. We shouldn't even really be getting. Let's bar this off real quick. Actual. I just want to see what this is, because I would have expected it to fail on one of these earlier expectations, but those might be getting checked after the fact. Okay, so we have an empty array. Interesting. We have an empty array. Why would we have an empty array? Var dump path, we're definitely getting there. Post store, other store, post index, and app h. So all that's good. And the files don't exist. We're returning false. Returning false, returning false. So that should be good. Let's just make sure that's good. Let's just drop this poor man's debugging. Okay, we actually are continuing on. That file should not exist. We're returning false. What's wrong with you? It's like it's continuing out of here and then just returning nothing, which is kind of strange. Like, here, let me better exemplify what's wrong here. So we're going to say here and then there. And we should have a here, there, here, there, here, there. But we don't get any of that. We just get here, here, here for the 3, but no there, there, there. So it's actually thinking that these exist, which is strange because I've said and return false here. So it's like that's not getting hit. Let's echo path. Maybe this path just isn't the same. App, HTTP requests post index request .php. App, HTTP requests post index request. That should match. Why aren't you matching? What's wrong here? Files is a mock, form request generator. Everything's good here. Everything's good here. Get path is building the right path. What's wrong with you? Anybody seen anything I'm not? Poll the audience again. I don't think it should be failing here. I feel like it should be matching these, in my opinion, but for some reason it's thinking that the files exist, even though we've stubbed that to say false. Excuse me. All right, we'll give this a few more minutes. And if it doesn't pop up, then we'll just kind of stop where we are, and I'll kind of figure it out on my own, because these tests are pretty slow writing anyways, and it's even worse when we're stuck on something. So let's do this. Let's var dump this out and see if we're getting like true or something, or null or whatever, because that's just a bit odd. So it's getting true. It only outputs new form requests. I said false. And return false. Where else am I doing and return true? And return true. So only down here. Those should get reset before this is called. Why would they be returning true? Oh, the exception. They're returning true afterwards. They're kind of returning nothing. All right, let's filter this and see what's going on. Filter. It's very strange. Do I not call, like, I do call subject output. What is your deal? Var dump actual. Something strange is happening here, and I have no doubt it's a result of all the copy pasting I did. You think you get ahead with doing copy paste, and then something like this happens. You'd be better off just writing it from scratch. Okay. It's an empty array. We're getting a failure. The assertion's failing, but what's very interesting is it's like it's never looping over these things. Ah, there it is. Knew it was something. Copy paste. Jerk. There we go. That's more of what I expect. Alright, let's put Humpty Dumpty back together again and get rid of all these silly little things I did. So let's get rid of that and that. We'll format this just for giggles. Alright, cool. Let's run this again, and now we should be getting exactly. Cool. So see, I'm outputting just kind of this very simple thing here, which is not really everything I want to do. So I'm going to cut this off, but let me at least pseudocode like what the build rules actually needs to do. Okay, so build rules needs to determine if it's a model reference. And I can do that by like pulling the dot notation prefix. So if it's like, for example, if it's like post.title, then I know it's post. And then otherwise, assume context from controller name. So in this case, like the controller is called post, that equals a post model. So we can say see if it's a model from controller name, more likely. All right, and then finally, simply output, field required, or simply output required rule. Okay, so with that said, let's just do this last part real fast. And this is basically just going to be the field name. So this will be called, how many spaces does that have? I think it's 12. It's a lot. Yep, 12. That's a lot. I think one of my other generators, I called this like indent. Let's just do that. Oh, hey there. Why did it just do that? It's very strange. All right, let's do a private constant of indent. And that's going to equal 12 of those puppies. Okay, and what we can do now is we can say output is self indent, no, indent, yes, and then dot a quoted bit here, so we can say something like quote, quote, field, and then we'll quote that to be required, and we'll always trail with a comma. Awesome. Okay, and I don't think I need, or yeah, I do need the trim. Okay, so this is a good example of what it would look like when we were all done. And then we do need an end of line on that. So I'm going to keep the EOL just because that's system specific. So like if you're on Windows, that's pretty good. And then field, how do we have data? Data right now is just an array of whatever. So this is really like, it's not really field. Let's do name. And here's where we're going to have to get like the name or the column or something here. So right now I can make the assumption that this is context and name, and I can explode the field on dot. Now this isn't always going to be something I can assume, but I can assume it for now just to make this particular test pass. So let's get the field and do that. So they're going to pass in a field. I'm going to break it up into the context and the name, or more specifically, the model, what we believe to be the model, and the name, or model and then column or something like that. And that should be kind of the output. Whoops. All right, let's see if this explodes. Okay, cool. So look, post index got title required because we're not linking up that other bit, right? And that's actually pretty good because it has a post dot prefix. It cut that out. It took column. So we've got this simple bit working. Awesome. So I'm going to cut the video off here, or the live stream off here, and then I'll work on these other two bits to basically try to line those up by passing in the controller name here. And then if I have that, I can reach into the tree and get the proper context. So basically build rules will get kind of cleaned up to get some more information about what comes across. So, all right. Thanks for all those watching live. Another long one today. I'm going to do one more tomorrow where hopefully we'll start working on the controller generator and actually bringing this all together. And then over the weekend, I'll finish up the command and try to get it tagged. So again, thanks everybody for watching live, bearing with me on the tech difficulties, and I hopefully will see some of you all tomorrow.